Ever wish you could track, like, dozens of animals in a video all at once?
Yeah.
Like, tell a computer what to look for, and bam, you've got all their movements mapped out.
Oh, yeah. It's the kind of thing researchers used to only dream about.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we're diving into today.
It really
A
is.
software package called Annolid
Yeah,
that's revolutionizing animal behavior analysis.
absolutely.
We've got articles, installation guides, even YouTube tutorials to break down for you. It's quite a stack.
Yeah, it really shows how Annolid sits at this intersection of cutting-edge AI,
Oh, yeah.
especially deep learning, and a design that's surprisingly user-friendly.
To kick things off, let's break down what Annolid actually does. What's the core function here?
Annolid is all about taking those research videos and making sense of the movement.
Okay.
It segments labels and then tracks whatever your target is, usually animals.
Okay.
The key here is something called instant segmentation.
Okay, now instant segmentation sounds pretty technical. Can you break that down for us?
Imagine you're watching a school of fish. Instead of just saying there's a fish, Annolid treats each individual fish as its own separate thing to track. It's like each fish gets its own little ID tag that the software can follow.
So it's not just seeing a blob of fish, it's understanding there are multiple distinct fish to track. That's pretty impressive.
It is, and it's come a long way. Early versions of Annolid relied heavily on researchers manually drawing outlines around each animal
Oh, wow.
in every single frame of video.
That sounds incredibly tedious.
Oh, it definitely was. But that's where the AI advancements really shine. Now, Annolid uses models like QD-SAM and Grounding Dino to do a lot of the heavy lifting automatically.
All right, those are some pretty interesting names.
Yeah.
Can we dive into what those models actually do?
Absolutely. QD, for example, is all about tracking from a single labeled frame. You basically show it one frame, tell it this is a fish, and it can then track that fish throughout the entire video.
Wait, so I only have to label one frame and it figures out the rest. How does that even work?
It uses something called memory frames. Think of it like QD having a short-term memory of what it's supposed to be tracking. It remembers the shape and position from previous frames. So even if the fish swims behind something for a moment, QD can predict where it will reappear.
So it's like it's anticipating the movement based on what it's already seen? That's wild. What about those other models, Sam and Grounding Dino?
Well, SAM, or the segment anything model, steps in to help identify all the visually distinct objects in a frame.
Oh, wow.
No training needed. You could have a video with fish, plants, rocks, whatever.
Okay.
Sam can pick them all out.
So it's like an all-purpose object finder. Does that mean it can also label them all?
That's where Grounding Dino comes in. Think of it like this. Instead of manually outlining each fish, you just type in fish. And Grounding Dino will find and label all the fish in the frame for you.
So we've gone from tedious manual outlining to just telling the computer, find the fish. That's a huge leap forward.
It really is. It saves researchers so much time, allowing them to focus on actually analyzing the behavior rather than getting bogged down in labeling.
And speaking of analyzing behavior, the source material mentions some pretty incredible real-world examples of Annolid in action. What kind of results are we talking about here?
There are some really compelling examples. One study used Annolid to track two mice interacting, and it followed both of them with 0 errors throughout the entire video, all from a single labeled frame.
Okay, so it can handle complex interactions.
Ah.
What about something a bit more challenging, like animals in water?
They actually tested Annolid on goldfish, which are constantly moving and often block each other's view.
Oh, yeah.
It successfully tracked 5 goldfish throughout the video, even when they swam out of frame and back in again.
What?
Only 3 minor corrections were needed throughout the entire video.
Wow, so it can even handle tricky scenarios like occlusion.
It's quite good at it, and they even pushed it further. They tried tracking 14 ants in a video, and Annolid nailed it, not a single error.
Ants. Those things are tiny.
I know, it's amazing how accurate this technology has become. And then they tried it with fruit flies. 6 of them, to be exact.
6 fruit flies. I can barely follow one when it's buzzing around.
Right. It did need a few more corrections in that case, but it still managed to track all 6 flies successfully.
Right.
And that brings up a really important point about Annolid. It isn't meant to completely replace human researchers.
So it's not a set it and forget it system.
Yeah.
It still needs some human input.
Exactly. It's more like a powerful assistant.
It can.
It can do the tedious tracking work, but it benefits from a human eye to catch those subtle errors or unexpected events that might trip it up.
So it's really about that collaboration between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
Precisely. It's the combination of automation and human oversight that makes Annolid so powerful.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
But how does that collaboration actually work? The source material mentions something called human in the loop. What does that mean in practice?
Human in the loop means Annolid isn't just a black box that spits out data.
Okay.
Researchers can interact with it in real time, adjust predictions if they're off-corrected and correct the outlines if needed, and even restart the process if something goes wrong.
So it's about giving researchers the tools to fine-tune the analysis and make sure the data is accurate.
Exactly. It's a partnership where Annolid does the grunt work, but the researcher is still in control.
I'm starting to see how valuable this could be for all sorts of research. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to hear more about those fruit fly examples. You mentioned they needed some corrections.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how Annolid handled those more complex scenarios?
The fruit fly examples are interesting because they really push the limits of what Annolid can handle. Fruit flies are notoriously difficult to track, even for humans, because they're so small and move so erratically.
Yeah, it's like trying to follow a bunch of tiny hyperactive dots.
Exactly. But even with 6 fruit flies zipping around in a confined space, Annolid was able to track them with only a few minor corrections needed.
So even though they're a challenge, it can still keep up with them.
To a certain extent, they actually tested it with 10 fruit flies to see how it would handle a larger group. And while there were more instances where it needed a little human guidance, it still managed to track all 10 flies pretty successfully.
That's impressive. I wouldn't even know where to begin trying to track 10 flies manually.
It would be a nightmare. But Annolid shows that this kind of detailed analysis is possible even with fast-moving, visually similar creatures.
So it sounds like there's a bit of a trade-off here.
Yeah.
The more complex the scenario, the more likely it is that Annolid will need some human intervention to ensure accuracy.
That's a good observation. It's not about replacing human researchers altogether. It's about finding the right balance between automation and human expertise.
So it's a tool that can assist researchers, but ultimately the human eye and brain are still essential for making sure the analysis is accurate and meaningful.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another really interesting aspect of Annolid, its potential applications beyond animal behavior research. The source material mentions some possibilities in fields like biomedical research and even robotics.
Now that's what I call thinking outside the box. How could Annolid be applied in those areas?
Well, let's take biomedical research as an example. Imagine being able to track the movement of individual cells in a living organism. We could study how cells interact, how they respond to different stimuli, even how diseases spread at a microscopic level.
Wow, so instead of tracking animals, we're talking about tracking individual cells. It's mind-boggling.
It is, and it could lead to breakthroughs in our understanding of diseases, drug development, and personalized medicine.
And what about robotics? How could Annolid play a role in that field?
Robotics is all about movement and interaction. Whether it's a self-driving car navigating traffic or a robotic arm performing surgery, these systems need to be able to perceive and respond to their surroundings. Annolid's tracking capabilities could be incredibly valuable in making robots more adaptable and responsive.
So it could help robots see and understand the world around them better.
That's fascinating.
Exactly. And as AI technology continues to advance, I have no doubt that we'll discover even more creative and impactful ways to use Annolid. It sounds like this could have a huge impact on a wide range of fields, not just animal behavior research. But before we get carried away with all the exciting possibilities, I think it's important to step back and consider the bigger picture. What does this all mean for the future of scientific research?
That's a great question. For me, what's most exciting about Annolid is the potential to democratize research. It's taking a task that was once incredibly time-consuming and resource-intensive and making it accessible to a much wider range of researchers.
So it's about breaking down those barriers and empowering more scientists to ask and answer important questions.
Precisely. And that means we could see an explosion of new discoveries and insights in the years to come.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've learned how Annolid works, seen how it's already being used to study animal behavior, and even explored its potential applications in other fields. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your personal take on all of this. What stands out to you the most?
What strikes me most is the sheer power of collaboration. Annolid itself is a product of collaboration, computer scientists, AI experts, and biologists all working together to create something truly groundbreaking. And as more researchers adopt this technology, we're going to see even more incredible collaborations and innovations emerge.
That's a great point. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about the human ingenuity and collaborative spirit that drives it forward. And speaking of collaboration, I think our listeners would love to hear some concrete examples of how they could potentially use Annolid in their own work or areas of interest. What kind of real-world applications come to mind?
It's inspiring to think about all the potential collaborations that could spring up around this technology. So let's get practical.
Okay.
What are some concrete ways someone listening could apply Annolid?
Yeah, like how could they actually use this?
Well, imagine you're a researcher studying animal social behavior, something that used to involve countless hours of manually scoring videos to track how individuals interact. With Annolid, that process becomes largely automated. Think about what you could do with that extra time.
Yeah, that's a game changer for anyone working with behavioral data. You'd be able to delve into the really interesting stuff much faster. What kinds of research questions become possible with this level of analysis?
You could start to explore the nuances of social dynamics, like hierarchy formation, communication patterns, or even how individual personalities influence group behavior. It opens up a whole new world of understanding.
It's like having a magnifying glass on the complexities of animal societies. And
Yeah.
it's not just limited to social behavior, right?
Yeah.
What other applications come to mind?
Absolutely. Annelid could be invaluable for wildlife biologists studying animal movement and habitat use. Imagine tracking individual animals in their natural environment, mapping out their territories, and analyzing their interactions with other species.
We could gain such rich insights into animal behavior in the wild. And with Annolid's ability to track multiple animals simultaneously, we could even start to understand how those individual behaviors contribute to the dynamics of a whole population or ecosystem.
That's a fantastic point. We often study animals in isolation, but their behaviors are interconnected in so many ways. Annelid gives us a tool to examine those connections.
It's like we're zooming out to see the bigger picture of how animals interact with each other and their environment. Are there any other potential applications that stand out to you?
One area I find particularly fascinating is the intersection of Annelid and conservation efforts. Imagine using this technology to monitor endangered species, track their movements, and understand how they're responding to changes in their habitat.
That could be transformative for conservation work. We could identify critical habitats, assess the effectiveness of conservation strategies, and even predict how populations might be affected by future environmental changes.
The possibilities are really endless. And as researchers continue to explore the capabilities of Annelid, I have no doubt that we'll discover even more innovative and impactful applications in the years to come.
It's exciting to think about the potential of this technology to revolutionize not only scientific research, but also our understanding of the natural world as a whole. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Annelid, what's the key takeaway you'd like our listeners to ponder?
For me, it all comes back to the power of asking bold, ambitious questions. Annelid is more than just a software package. It's a tool that empowers us to ask those questions and seek answers in ways that were previously unimaginable.
It's a reminder that innovation often stems from asking what if, and then having the tools and technology to pursue those what ifs. If we can track 80 flies with remarkable accuracy today, what will be possible in the next 5, 10, or 20 years? The possibilities are truly mind-boggling.
I couldn't agree more. The future of animal behavior research is looking brighter than ever, and it's thanks to innovations like Annelid that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's been a fantastic deep dive. We've learned about Annolid's journey from manual outlining to cutting-edge AI, explored its incredible capabilities in tracking a variety of creatures, and even pondered its potential impact on diverse fields like conservation and robotics.
It's been a pleasure sharing this fascinating technology with our listeners.
And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring on your own. We've included links to all the resources mentioned in this deep dive, including those incredible videos showing Annolid in action. Check them out. And be sure to join the conversation on our forum. We're eager to hear your thoughts on the possibilities that stand out to you. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.